My name is Mario, I'm a confectioner and patissier, and I will show you now how we make our traditional Viennese apple strudel. So at first I tell you a little bit of the history of our recipe. This is actually more than 300 years old, and the way to work with the dough is a little bit older and comes from Turkey over the Hungarian kitchen here to us to Vienna. And the apple strudel recipe, the first recipe is known in Austria and comes from, includes always the two parts, the dough and our filling. At first we start with the dough because it takes a bit longer to prepare. So for the dough it's important that you use a very fine and plain wheat flour with a high gluten content. That's important. So here in Austria we use the type 700 of the flour, but high gluten is very important for the dough. Then we add some lukewarm water. Then we need sunflower oil, 1 egg. We add because of the lecithin that we can bind the water and the oil in our dough, and at least a pinch of salt. So the salt makes the dough even softer, so don't forget it. At home you can do it actually by hand. You just mix all ingredients together in a bowl, well kneaded by hand, or you can also do it with a mixer or with a kitchen machine, whatever you prefer. We take our kitchen machine here because we make 14 kilograms of dough at once, so it's a bit easier for us here. Important is that you rest the dough half an hour into the fridge. Better is to keep it in for a few hours because the dough will get more softer and easier to work if it has a longer resting time then. But amount to that, we also have a little secret house trick for you at home. You can also put the dough for about 10 minutes into an oil bath, and then the dough will get more flexible, more elastic, and it will also not rip that easy if you want to stretch it very thin. Yes, so while the resting time of the dough, you have enough time to prepare your filling. For the filling, it's important that you use only sour apples, because the more sour the apples are, the better is the taste of the strudel in the end. We mostly use Boskop, Granny Smith or Grapensteiner, and then just slice it, peel it, but don't cook it beforehand, because if you cook it, the filling will get too soft in the end, so we use the raw apple for the filling. Then we add lemon juice that the apples stay fresh and will not get brown because of the oxidation. Then to bind the filling, we use breadcrumbs and a cinnamon and sugar mix, and then we roast it in butter, and at least we add it to our filling here. Yes, and the last ingredient in the bakery, we use regular raisins, but in the traditional recipe you can find drunk raisins. So these are soaked in rum for about 24 hours or longer, so they get a very special taste. So if you like the flavor, you can also add these raisins to your filling at home. Yes, so now we can start with our strudel. Important is to use a cloth. This is made out of linen or cotton. So at home you can also take an old tablecloth as well. Just make sure that it has roughly the same size, that you can easily work with it. And now we start to cover the cloth with flour so that the dough will not stick to it. And also very important is that we cover the dough itself in flour, because otherwise the dough is too sticky and it will just stick to the rolling pin while we roll it out. So we just cover the dough in flour as well, and now we put it into the middle of the cloth, and we start to press down these sides that we get a little hill in the middle, because now we just roll the dough from the center outwards. And so if we got a little hill here in the middle, it is a bit easier to roll it out, and even if you make some mistakes, you can put the dough into the right directions from the middle outwards, and so you can make sure that the dough is nicely even everywhere. Das heißt aber natürlich jetzt für zu Hause wird man ein bisschen, so that might mean at home you have to turn and twist your rolling pin a little bit at home. We're gonna cheat now and save some time here, because we have a turning table here, so it's a bit easier, or maybe if you like you can also run around your table and if it's possible, but important is that you only roll the dough from the center outwards. That's the only thing you have to care about it, and not too big, so just a round form but not too big. The size like that is big enough for stretching the dough. Just make sure that you don't wear any watches or rings before you start, because you easily cut a lot of holes into your dough. And also don't use your fingers, only the back of your hands, and cover it with flour, because otherwise we will stick to the dough while we stretch it. And now we make 2 fists and we start to stretch the dough from the middle outwards. And of course you can do that in different kind of ways. So maybe if you are in a hurry, I can also show you how you can do it a little bit faster. You can also do it like that, but you will spread flour everywhere in your kitchen if you want to do it like that. So if it's not the best idea for at home, the easiest way is you just let it on one hand, and you take the other hand and you only grab after with the other hand, and you only work on the edges of the dough. And you see it takes a bit longer, but the dough also stretches by his own weight. And if it's getting too big, then you can also use the elbows for stretching the dough if you can't hold it anymore. But as you can see, we get a really nice and large tin dough in a really fast time. Important is that you only work here on the edges and not in the middle, because there is already thin enough. And now our dough seems to be fine. It's big enough for our strudel, so we can give it back to the cloth now. But before we start to fill it, we also have to make 2 tests now. We just have to look that the dough is also flexible and elastic enough. So we just make a little air bubble here out of the dough, and now we just pat around. Hoppala. I'm sorry. That works. Just again. So again, and just an air bubble, and now pat around a little bit, and you can see the dough should not break. So that's really important. You can see the juice, because the apples lose a lot of juice while you bake it, and you can see it will stay in the dough while you bake it. So that's really important for us. So we can also make our second test. We have a little saying in Austria, maybe you heard about it. We say the dough should be normally so thin that you can read a newspaper through it. So we just try it out with our recipe here to make sure that the dough is also thin enough. And let's have a look if it works. Of course you can really read through it. So that's already thin enough for us. So we can start to fill it. As you can see, that's thin enough for us. So now we fill our dough always alongside.
Hey, what do you do if the air bubble breaks?
I'm sorry? Then the dough is not flexible enough.
You gotta start all over?
But if you have, I can show you. Should I make a little hole here inside? I make. So if you make a hole like that in your dough, don't worry about that. Just if you have a big hole like that, then you have to knead it again and rest it. But if you make a hole like that, it's no problem. You can fold the dough over, just press it, and you can easily close it. If you make a hole the first few times, you don't have to knead all the dough. Just push around, and now you can see you can make an air bubble again. And now it's closed again. So don't worry about that if you make a hole like that. So you can easily close it again. So now we can start to fill it. And we fill our dough always alongside. And the best way, you just take 2 handfuls at once because you can form compact little portions out of these, and so we can build a little wall alongside the dough. And if you remember of the ingredients of our dough, so you might have noticed that we don't put any sugar into the dough, so just in the filling, but the dough is very neutral in taste. That means you can use the same recipe of the dough for every kind of strudel you want to try out. You can also use other fruits, of course, or quark cheese for an Apfelstrudel is also very popular in Austria. Or you can also use savory fillings with meat, cheese, ham, fish, eggs, bacon, whatever comes to your mind. You can be very creative here with the fillings. So, and now I will show you why we need our cloth here. Just a moment. So, just a second, please. So, at first, we just need to pull the one end of the dough carefully over the filling, and now we also just press out the air so that we also get a nice compact strudel. And now you can see why we need our cloth. So just lift the cloth up on this side here